Morning. I come to you from the Oregon wing of the Great Global Collaboratory. It's great to be here at Globe, my first opportunity to come to this conference and to share some time with so many business innovators and thought leaders who understand exactly what it takes to create a sustainable, clean economy. Creativity, smart business thinking, and partnerships that cross borders, both geographic and political. Now, while my remarks this morning are going to focus primarily on what steps we need to take together to accelerate the movement and the progress that many of you in this room and innovators throughout the West Coast region have already achieved, I think it's essential that we take a few moments on the front end and understand a bit about the strategic challenge we face and the strategic realities we face trying to advance a sustainable, clean economy. Albert Einstein once said that you shouldn't use an old map to explore a new world. And I think he was absolutely right. Each new generation is faced with a new world and a new set of challenges. And these are challenges that can't be met by clinging to the past, but only by imagining a new world and building a new set of tools with which to achieve it. The truth is that the systems and assumptions that underlie many of our 20th century economic development strategies are simply no longer valid in a resource-constrained world, which means we're going to have to change the systems themselves. There's an excellent book called The Age of Paradox by business writer Charles Handy that I think captures the dilemma that we face today. And he traces the development of a successful organization, in this case a successful business. And from the slide you can see a successful business starts with an investment climate that produces growth and prosperity. And then as the circumstances and the environment in which the business operates begin to change, if the business doesn't modify its business plan to reflect a new environment rather than the old, growth begins to plateau and eventually decline. And I think General Motors, circa 2008, is an example of a company that didn't heed this and continued to build large, fuel-inefficient cars in the face of high gasoline prices and concerns over global climate change. Now, a successful business, when it recognizes that the business environment is changing, builds a new business model that's based on the new realities rather than the old, and builds a new growth curve. I can have the next slide, please. So for a moment, a period in time, both the old business model and the new business model, there's one more slide there, I know. Is it my job to do this? Aha. Manual control, autopilot is off. For a while, the old business model and the new business model have to coexist. And Handy calls that area between those two curves the area of paradox. And it's an area of a lot of anxiety and a lot of churning. People know that what they're doing isn't working, but because they're afraid of the unknown, they continue to hold on to the old model even though it ceases to serve. And I think that's exactly where we find ourselves today in this country, and probably both of our countries, in education, in healthcare, in how we seek to manage our natural resources, and certainly in our policies that pertain to energy and economic development. And it's not unlike the ropes game. If you've ever been to outdoor school, they put you on a post 10 feet over the ground, holding onto a rope for balance, and over here's another post and another rope. And your job is to move from one post, let's say the old business model, to the other post. And the only way you can get there is you've got to lean out as far as you can, and for a moment you've got to let go of that one rope in order to grab the new one. And I think that the leadership challenge we face today is to be able to describe that new clean energy business model in such a robust way that people can see it and believe in it and let go of the old model in order to embrace it. So with that context, I think it's little wonder that we're seeing so many conflicts in our region over old and new energy business models. We're seeing conflicts about the import and export of fossil fuels and the high cost of maintaining an old energy infrastructure. We're seeing conflicts and trade wars about trying to lock up market share of the next new line of energy products. We're seeing heated policy debates about leveling the playing field for clean energy. A lot of paradox indeed, good mainly for lawyers, which is never a good thing. Because these conflicts don't solve problems for businesses, they don't put people back to work, they just delay doing what we need to do to actually create that sustainable, clean economy. Which is why I came to Vancouver to my first Globe conference to try to strengthen and deepen relationships with leaders across the West Coast region to answer a series of questions. First question, how do we move away from a boom-bust economic cycle that depletes our natural capital and leaves us vulnerable to fluctuations in the global economy? How do we create and retain economic activity and family wage jobs while reducing our carbon footprint? How do we minimize the need for imported energy? And how do we keep capital in our region by developing local sources and local supply chains? And most importantly, how do we go faster? How do we make this transition faster? Well, I think we made a big investment in the right strategy last night at the annual Pacific Coast Collaboratives Leaders Forum. Leaders of 4 jurisdictions, British Columbia, Oregon, Washington, and California, reaffirmed that clean energy collaboration and low carbon innovation is central to a win-win competitive strategy that has already created a $47 billion regional market. We signed the dotted line. Your Premier Christy Clark, Governor Gregoire, Governor Jerry Brown of California, and myself. And we all committed to a 2010 Jobs Action Plan designed to create up to 1 million new jobs in this industry in our region over the next decade, through measurable commitments to retrofit energy efficiency for our state and provincial buildings, fleet purchases of advanced technology vehicles, and creating world-class energy standards that will incent public sector leadership and private sector investment. So we're bound by a common coast. We're separated from our national capitals by majestic mountains, and we recognize that energy is the economic engine of the future, not the political football that many partisans would try to make it. Just ask the 500,000 people on the Pacific Coast who are cashing green paychecks every week. We reject the notion that jobs and the economy are in conflict, that in fact it is a false choice, as our own experience and hard data clearly demonstrate to us. We know that the cleanest form of energy is the energy we don't use, and that there is a tremendous economic potential in significantly scaling up energy efficiency and conservation. We know that the real potential for our extraordinary natural resources is not in their exploitation, but rather in their restoration. And we know that global markets are hungry for the services and products and technologies of the clean economy. So here are the facts. The facts are that clean job creation rates in the clean economy are far greater than the job creation rates in some of our traditional sectors that are in decline. They pay better, and they've been much more resilient to the downturn of the Great Recession. And now we have our new West Coast Clean Economy Economic Study that was commissioned by the Pacific Coast Collaborative and produced by Globe's great analytics team. And it suggests that the regional clean economy will triple to $147 billion by 2020. What's the secret of our success so far? Why have we accelerated so fast to date? Well, I think part of it has to do with our willingness to pioneer ahead, our willingness to embrace change, and perhaps a little West Coast stubbornness that allows us to maintain our political course regardless of the way the political winds are blowing. Led by California in the South, which in 2010 rejected a ballot measure funded by Texas oil companies that would have rolled back their commitment to climate change, to British Columbia in the North, where Vancouverites proudly reinvest their gas and carbon tax revenues to fuel a cleaner future, we are all beginning to lean into the tremendous economic opportunities that we see lying ahead. So to get the job done, I see four key leadership themes for future innovation and collaboration and continued economic success. The first one is to lead by example and do our part. State and provincial governments can, in fact, catalyze job creation and new markets through their own actions. For example, the government here in British Columbia legislated and actually achieved the goal of carbon neutrality for public buildings by 2010, a North American first. Quite remarkable. The government's investment to date of $61 million has leveraged an additional $49 million from utilities and created 500 jobs. Now, I believe that through energy efficiency innovations like these, we can unlock literally billions of dollars in trapped equity over the next decade. When it comes to job creation, clearly the private sector has to lead the way. But state governments and provincial governments can and must play a role as accelerators and barrier busters for this new economy of innovation. In particular, government can help catalyze new markets through smart research and development investments, through smart workforce investments, and through consistent, transparent policies that reward and encourage private sector investment. In Oregon, for example, we're very proud of our programs like the Cool Schools Initiative and the Clean Energy Works of Oregon, which have used online building financing and other innovative financing tools to make it easier for homeowners and school districts to take the plunge, to cut back their energy use and save money through energy efficiency retrofits. The third key leadership theme is to manage climate risk. It's estimated that the West Coast region will invest up to $600 billion in infrastructure over the next decade, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers. We better be sure that those infrastructure investments are put in the right place. Our taxpayers will be forced to pay billions of dollars more to replace them if they were lost or destroyed due to climate change, extreme weather events, or other factors. In addition, 21st century regional infrastructure is going to require new thinking across borders and actually new financing innovation if we're going to attract new sources of institutional capital. Finding a replacement for the gas tax, for example, is a leading concern. That's why we're in active discussions to create an innovative West Coast regional infrastructure exchange to fund projects of regional significance throughout the Columbia River Basin, to further boost our region's economic and energy competitiveness while creating additional jobs. And the fourth leadership theme is collaborate to make it happen out west. I think some stereotypes portray the West Coast as being somewhere filled with surfers and snowbirders and Starbucks. But the fact of the matter is the Pacific Coast has always been a hotbed of innovation. We've got tremendous ports, great infrastructure, and we lie in a sweet spot between two Asian markets, two Eastern markets, I should say, Asia and the Manhattan-Montreal corridor. Yet, I think that our future prosperity is probably going to depend more than anything else on our ability to leverage regional collaboration into a competitive edge. Because we share not only rivers and coastlines, but we also share supply sources and supply lines. Just one of our great regional companies, Boeing, for example, employs thousands of individuals and hundreds of businesses in California, in British Columbia, and in Oregon. So what does success look like? I would say that rather than continuing to play zero-sum games where we fight over every manufacturing facility that threatens to outsource a West Coast job with tax breaks we can hardly afford, we need to begin to work together through the Pacific Coast Collaborative, through other mechanisms to insource new regional supply chains, to build advanced manufacturing corridors, and then to capitalize on our exports of the goods and services and products of a clean economy and our green building expertise. If we get this right, we have the opportunity to build a brighter future, a cleaner future, and to do it much faster. That, to me, is the future if we have the wisdom to seize it. So my challenge to you this morning, both to those of you in the public sector and both in the private sector, is to find the courage to let go of that old business model and the vision to develop that new one. A new business model that recognizes that jobs and the environment are not in conflict, a business model that recognizes that regional collaboration is the key to national and international competitiveness. I want to close my remarks this morning with the words of Wallace Stegner in a book called The Sound of Mountain Water. And these are words to me that capture the challenge before us in this unique moment in time when we have the opportunity to do something profoundly important for our region, for our continent, and for our planet. Angry as one may be at what heedless men have done and still do to a noble habitat, one cannot be pessimistic about the West. This is still the native home of hope. When it finally learns that cooperation, not rugged individualism, is the quality that most characterizes and preserves it, then it will have achieved itself and outlived its origins. Then it has a chance to build a society to match its scenery. Thank you very much.